Question number 33 of the IP password exam from PhilNITS. In this question, we are being asked, when setting up PC1 for connecting to the internet, an IP address is set in default gateway. That is one of the network settings of PC1. Which of the following devices has this IP address? Before we dive into the choices, let's look at the keywords from the description in the question. So we got PC1 and we needed to connect it to the internet. We also have something about the IP address and something about default gateway, so that we could connect to the internet based on these network settings. We're being asked which of the following devices has this IP address. Okay, so let's look at the choices. We have here words like router. Is it this one? Firewall. Is it this one? DHCP server. DHCP server. Or proxy server. In this case, I was just answering this again after about half a year of not answering it. And actually, I chose the incorrect answer. But let's see why I ended up with the wrong answer. Firewall, definitely it's not the answer, because we are looking for the default gateway, which among the devices has the IP address set to default gateway. And firewall, what it does, as we know, is it could stop incoming connections or outgoing connections. And it doesn't really give us the IP address that is set in default gateway. So this is not correct. Proxy server 2, I think in this case, isn't really what we need. And we know that the proxy server is a way for us to also connect to the internet, because at times if you are in a vicinity, like in a school, we want to make sure that each and every computer that is connecting via the school network, we have their MAC addresses, we have the machine identification, so we know who is using which computer to view what, who's using the computer to go to which websites. And the proxy server lets us get hold of that information. But in this case, it's not necessarily the one that's giving us the default gateway as the IP address. So I ended up with either A or C, and I chose DHCP because it seems like it's the device that gives us the IP address, whether it's default or not. But turns out in this case, it's the router that gives us the default gateway. I think when I was first answering this about half a year ago, I emphasized the part here, the default part, because usually the router would be able to give us the IP address so that we can connect to the internet right away without having to have an additional DHCP server. It's like it has its own DHCP settings there that it could use to give the IP address to all the computers that are connecting to it. But in this case, and it's because of that actually that the correct answer is the router that gives us the default gateway, and we don't really need a DHCP server to do that for us. Okay, let's see if I've anything else in my notes so we can add something um, to the stuff that I've already shared? Okay, so even before, when I first answered this, I was choosing between A or C, and turns out the correct answer is letter A. I've been saying that I've first attempted to answer this question about half a year ago, but even after that span of time, which isn't really too long, I think, about half a year, answering this again, even though I knew already what the correct answer was supposedly, I could still make mistakes with my answers. So this just tells us something about how we can improve ourselves. I know there are people who, after they've gone through a sample test, maybe several sample tests, they need to immediately take the exam. Otherwise, if they had to wait for about half a year, it's likely that they'll forget. Even though they've taken the sample tests, they've gone through the training, after about half a year of not going back and reviewing, because maybe they don't use those things as much, they could end up making the same mistakes all over again, even though they would likely have a recollection that, hey, I've just taken something like this before too, and I could just remember taking the exam and this part of the exam, but it's at the end something that gets them a much lower score. So what we gotta do is really to take a lot of these sample exams, learn why the answer is this way and not the other way, understand the explanations, review, and apply it in your own context so that at least you'll recall the the way to answer the questions and get a much higher score.